Welcome to day two. My name is again Shakouri from Joint Venture Silicon Valley. We have two speakers for this breakfast morning to give a little bit perspective, deeper dive discussion. First one is Roberto Gallardo. He's a director of Purdue Center for Regional Development and looking at a state of rural Indiana economy.
Here's what we mean by rural. There's many ways to define rural, so I'm just going to stick to this one. It has its pros and its cons, but basically the dark green, it's rural, less than no urban clusters of 10,000 or more, and they are not adjacent, or 25% of their workers do not commute to a nearby metro area. There's a couple of small city and urban that may not seem urban or small city, but it's because of this commuting of workers. That's how they're defined. So here we have population. Notice that up until 1989, 1990, they were kind of all moving together and then they diverged. This is not uncommon. This is happening across the US. So you can see that the gray and the black, which is urban and Indiana overall, have increased significantly, while small city and rural are kind of holding their ground. But still they remain kind of flat, and that trend seems to be going down. So what is going on? So I'm going to show a couple of cumulative components of population change here. This one shows that Indiana as a whole gained about 370,000 residents in the decade of 2000 and 2010. It also gained 272,000 in the 2010-2020 decade. Notice, however, that number is smaller. It is slowing down. Again, not uncommon. The domestic migration, however, almost doubled. They lost 25,000 residents in that first decade, and then they lost close to 50,000 in the next decade. Immigration went up, and natural increase also was positive, but it was lower compared to the previous decade as well, from 305,000 natural births minus deaths versus 211,000. So it's both domestic is accelerating, natural is slowing down, and immigration is kind of holding its ground. That's overall Indiana. This is urban Indiana. Notice they gained population 368,000 in the first decade, 293,000 in the second decade. They barely gained on domestic. Notice from 34,000 to 2,000. Natural also went down from 259,000 to 190,000, and immigration again buffered this decline, or this slowing down, from 74,000 to 100,000. This is small city. Notice they barely gained in the first decade. They lost in the second decade, and the out migration or domestic migration did decrease a little bit. Natural decreased, and immigration also slowed down. And here's rural. Domestic migration, it has been consistent, 18,000 in the first decade, 17,000 in the second decade. You have 13,000 natural versus 6,000 natural the next decade. And then immigration kind of remained there, kind of steady, but overall the loss was 3 times higher in the second decade than it was in the first decade, from 3,000 to 9,000. So these are the population snapshots. Here is total employed. You can see again kind of how they were moving together. Now they're wide, spread out, with small city really not holding its ground. They're kind of both rural and small city going downward. We will see. This is pre-COVID now, so we're looking for the 2020 data and see how that plays out. This one is per capita market income, which is you remove transfer receipts, Social Security, and other unemployment benefits from income, and that gives you the market income. These are real dollars. Notice rural. I double checked my numbers and they are accurate. We're guessing it's agriculture that's driving that. You have less people, but a lot of money, in a way, a lot of money coming in. So rural is at the top, small city again lagging, and then you have urban and Indiana as a whole kind of moving together. Next, I'm just going to talk quickly about industrial clusters. We need to look at the upper right quadrant called stars. I know it's going to be busy, but this is urban. I just want to point out advanced materials over there. We've got to look at the red number location quotients higher than 1.25. And I'm not going to get into all the boring math, but that tells you it's concentrating and it's advancing. Chemicals as well in urban Indiana, it's moving along. Small city, advanced materials, it's higher. The location quotient 3.33. It employed 50,000 people, and that's where you are on that. And then rural, the same thing. You've got advanced materials there. Of course, agriculture and food processing pops up, 3.47. Location quotient, it's a measure of concentration. So you see there that how the clusters have changed over the past decade. The question will be in this decade, especially after COVID, that drove a lot of changes in business practices and so forth, how these numbers are going to play out. We also looked at the percent of remote occupations that are friendly to percent of occupations that are remote work friendly. You can see here it's very steady. This tells us that the economy still has a long way to go to truly digitize itself, because we're kind of using that as a benchmark to say they are remote work friendly. Not all occupations will be friendly, but you can see it's been kind of steady from 2001 to 2019, according to University of Chicago. It's about a third, 35% versus 25% to 30% in rural areas. So that's kind of where we are on the remote work occupations. On the share of digital economy jobs, this one is based on about 190 industries. It keeps changing. Bureau of Economic Analysis keeps updating their metrics every year. And so this is kind of moving target, but here you can see rural is remaining kind of flat, where between 1 and 1.5% of its jobs are digital economy related, compared to urban and Indiana overall, it's way higher, close to 3.5%. But then, of course, our bread and butter here at PCRD, aside from the industrial clusters, you can see there's a lot of unequal stuff, and we're going to talk about that in the next session, digital playing field. But I just want to point out here, the dark green is rural. Notice that percent of homes in rural Indiana with cellular data only or no internet access was close to 40%. Compared to 25% in urban Indiana. So that's the second kind of group of bars from the top down. That's not an equal playing field, folks. When we see this economy continue to digitize, they don't have the same starting line. And so that is very, very concerning. We have got to work on this unequal digital playing field. The seniors gap, which is the last one, it shows seniors, it's more an issue of computer ownership rather than internet access, while children is the opposite. Computers, because of schools, typically they do have a device, but they may struggle with connectivity at home. So there are different groups require different solutions. Here, the Brookings Institution was able to compute about 80% of jobs to see if they had low, middle, or high digital skills for each of the jobs. Here you can see a breakdown in the US. The dark gray means the percent of jobs that required high digital skills, and then the light gray required low digital skills. You can see here overall in the US, 29.2% of jobs required low digital skills versus 28.6% high, but move to the right and you'll see rural has a higher share of those low, 33.7% versus 19.1%. And I know it's a lot of information, but that's why I gave the disclaimer. It's 7 o'clock, so I'm not going to quiz you, okay? But this shows, again, some discrepancies and really some beating the drum on ensuring that rural is on that bandwagon. We cannot ask rural to sprint with urban if we are not at the same starting line. And this graph is the one that has gotten a lot of attention. This one shows the exact same situation, but between 2010 and 2019, Indiana, out of 80% of total jobs, this is only reflecting 80% of total jobs, but it gained about 114,000 jobs. However, those that required low digital skills plummeted, 160,000 were lost. Those that required middle and high school or high digital skills was 154 and 117. What this graph means is if you don't have digital skills, you're missing out on the entirety of new jobs created over the past decade. And this is pre-COVID. post-COVID, I'm afraid it's going to be a lot worse. Okay, and this one, GoDaddy in Arizona did a very fascinating study. As all of us in the broadband sphere know, we do not have adequate adoption and utilization data, but this one shows what GoDaddy calls ventures, which is websites per 100 residents. Then there's highly active, which are very sophisticated, well-connected, a lot of links, you know, whatever. The darker the color, the higher the highly active ventures. These are highly correlated with economic benefits. So this is what I use when I go into a community and I tell them, do you have a website? Oh, I do, but it's 10 years old. Okay, well, we've got to make sure that our moms and pops, our small businesses in rural communities have an adequate online presence. It's not all about access. I know that's the hot topic right now, but it's also adoption and utilization. Okay, so that's kind of my crash course here on the rural economy. I promised I will not quiz you, so I will not.
My name is Johnny Park. I'm the CEO of WHIN, stands for Wabash Heartland Innovation Network. We are a nonprofit organization focused on developing a very large scale living lab here in Indiana. So apologies for all those little mix-ups in the font here. But we make up 10 counties. We focus on 10 counties, anchored in Tippecanoe County. That's where we are today. That's where Purdue University is, and all the 9 surrounding counties. Mostly very rural. So about 400,000 residents in this region, about 4,300 square mile, and 2 million of that, or most of that, is, as you can imagine, corn and soybean. And by very strong also in manufacturing. 1 of 10 are employed in manufacturing. So Lilly Endowment, who is a primary funder of our organization, really challenged the leaders of this region to say, what could you do with a substantial investment to your region? And we looked at, all right, well, we are very good and strong in ag and manufacturing, okay? And we have also very unique asset, Purdue University and Ivy Tech in our region, right? I like to say the Purdue University has the only university with top 10 engineering school and top 10 College of Ag. Very unique. So very impressed that the leaders latched on to this emerging technology called IoT. All of you are familiar, the Internet of Things technologies, that is going to transform, is already transforming all sectors of industry, but especially so in ag and manufacturing. So our ambitious goal is to transform this region into a global epicenter of digital ag and next generation manufacturing. So going back to the Living Lab, the primary strategic way that we're going to do that is to develop this 10-county region as a very large scale Living Lab for innovative IoT technologies. So what is Living Lab? So our definition is a physical region, right? It's not virtual, it's a physical region where public entities, private companies, universities, and residents, the community, it's very important for us, form a collaborative, innovative ecosystem that does all the way from discovery, development, validating, and realizing the full benefit of new technologies in real life context, right? All the way from discovery to realizing full benefits. So that is our definition of Living Lab. And again, our goal is to develop this region into a large scale Living Lab for IoT technologies in ag and manufacturing. All right. So, well, the question was, okay, if we want to really build a large scale Living Lab in ag and manufacturing, how do we go about it? And we felt very strongly that we have to accelerate the adoption of IoT technologies by local farmers and local manufacturers. So this question of how do we accelerate that really gave us a focal point of developing the following ecosystem. All right, so what we do at WHIN is we feel that we are in a unique position. Again, we're nonprofit, but we have expertise of vetting IoT technologies out there. So we vet, and once vetted, we actually bring those technologies in and we subsidize initial costs of those products so that farmers and manufacturers in the region, it's almost a no-brainer for them to try it out, okay? So then Alliance members here are, again, are local farmers and local manufacturers. They get to use vetted and discounted IoT products. In return, they agree to share the data. It's really important, right? Because for us as a nonprofit, we want to make sure that Purdue and IB Tech are plugged in to this ecosystem. And one of the primary ways we do that is through sharing this data obtained from real farms and real factories using real IoT products and anonymize it and make it available for research purposes. So researchers and educators in the region or around the nation, for that matter, have access to this incredibly valuable real-world data. They're going to further advance the technology. Oftentimes, this leads into partnership of developing next-generation products. Of course, IB Tech is going to train relevant workforce who are digitally skilled, as Roberto just mentioned about, which is really critical. As a tech partner, again, these are the companies who are providing the solutions in IoT. It's an incredible opportunity to be part of this ecosystem because we provide, or this network provides, access to progressive farmers and manufacturers, early customers who are incentivized to adopt technologies, right? And they're going to naturally make investments in the region, and we're going to reinvest all this into the Livinglab so that this can be sustainable and vibrant for the long haul. So I'm going to go through pieces of it a little deeper here. So I'm going to start with tech partners, right? A very important part of this ecosystem. These are high growth, innovative IoT tech companies, and we want to attract them here and equip the Livinglab with their products. So these are some examples of companies that we have brought in and we are currently vetting. Various IoT digital ag technology companies who are growing very rapidly. These are some examples of companies that we have brought in, and all their products are installed in factories in our region, and some of the companies that we're vetting currently. I think I'm just going to skip this video here. Okay. So, and then let's skip to Alliance members here. Again, these are really, really important. I call this almost the engine that drives the entire ecosystem. It really starts from local farmers and local manufacturers adopting these innovative IoT technologies. So in the last about 2.5 years, we were able to recruit and have 47 farmer members join our network. So these are the locations of the farmer members who joined, and they represent about 200,000 acres of farm. Very progressive and very community-minded people who understand the adoption of technology not only helps their own operations, but also is going to help this network and the region altogether. We also have 17 local manufacturers who joined our network. Again, these are mostly small to medium rural manufacturers who may not have the expertise or resources to vet technologies or adopt technologies. So we fill the gap on their behalf. And they represent about 11,000 employees in the region. Essentially, this is a small manufacturer in the region adopting technologies that they had no access to before, but they just had no idea what's possible. But because of our efforts, they're able to adopt and expose to technologies that they're adopting in their factory. So let's talk about research partners here. Again, very important part of this ecosystem. So I mentioned about all those products that we vet and bring to farmers and manufacturers in our region. And I mentioned that the data is made available and we anonymize it, we aggregate it, and we make it available for research and education purposes. So at our website, data.whin.org, all these data that's been collected, all the weather stations, imagery, the vibration data of all the factory machines are cleaned out and make it available for research purposes. So just give you an example, we have 180 weather stations that are deployed in real farms, right? And collecting this incredible temperature, soil moisture, radiation, wind speed every 15 minutes. And all that data is helping farmers to make better decisions, but it's also being made available for research and education purposes. Another example is we have a company called Intelinair that provides this high resolution images in farms, and they fly 13 times a year, over 600,000 acres in a region. All the data is helping farmers to make better decisions in their crop decisions, but the data is also being made available for researchers for their research and education. Just, this is a quick slide showing that, DataMine, Purdue has a program called DataMine, which is incredibly very innovative. And I believe there's about 700 to 800 students who live in a dorm together for a year, right? All across disciplines. It could be engineering, political science, agriculture science. They all live together for a year and they work on data science projects together, which is really cool project. And all of our data, again, these are real world data from real farms and factories are being available to students for their projects. And another aspect which is really rewarding for me is that as I talk to these students, right, they come from all backgrounds and they are very interested in data science projects. And I say, hey, how many of you think that, ag or manufacturing is, cool opportunity to pursue your technology careers? Before the talk, maybe two hands go up, right? But as soon as we talk about all those digital technologies being transforming ag and manufacturing, they get excited about it. And by the end of the talk, so how many of you think that it's going to have a cool opportunity in ag and manufacturing? Almost everybody raise their hand. So this is, again, I think education is also a big component of promoting this technology here. I'm going to just talk briefly about the need for I in IoT, the broadband initiative that WHIN is doing. So broadband was not part of WHIN's initiative in the beginning, but it really came out of necessity that as we are trying to accelerate adoption of digital technologies in rural farms and factories, you can't have IoT without the I, right? And so it really was a burden and a big roadblock for us to pursue our mission. So, we are approaching this very similarly as we do with ag and manufacturing technologies. That is, we vet and deploy innovative rural broadband technologies to accelerate its adoption. And we're going to drive innovation, drive research and education from real usage of such technologies. And I know my colleague, Greg Jarman, is going to come and talk more about this. But let me just briefly go over some of the big initiatives. So as an initial step, we're going to launch an aerostat. I know some of you are going to visit in person and look forward to that. It's a 80-foot wide balloon, if you will, that operates at 1,500 feet in the air and is tethered and is fiber connected. And because of its height, it provides incredible range, and it has about 300 pounds of payload to carry multiple wireless antennas in that. So this is a kind of close-up view of that aerostat. And this is a view when we did a test flight of a few months ago, flying at 1,500 feet in the air. So the thought is, okay, well, we want to not only connect people in our region, but we're also very interested in connecting sensors in farms and factories. So LoRaWAN is a protocol that is suitable for sensor connectivity. And we expect it's going to have 50-mile radius. So that's 100 miles from one end to the other. Incredible range, which practically covers entire region. So we're going to have a full coverage of LoRaWAN based on one aerostat. And we are also going to complement that by deploying 10 gateways, terrestrial towers that would also fill some gaps in our region. We're also expecting to have fixed wireless service. We are testing it out, and we expect to have about 20-mile radius for fixed wireless. We're also going to test out whether this can serve as a wireless backhaul to very difficult to reach area, right? So it's not only going to serve rural communities, but it also introduces lots of innovation and research and education opportunities because of this infrastructure. Again, going back to our strategic framework, if I want to just have one piece in information, WHIN is developing this region as a very large-scale living lab for innovative IoT technologies, and we're making a good progress towards that. So my closing thought: if you are a tech startup in ag and manufacturing, again, we'd love to have you in our living lab. If you're looking to pilot rural connectivity technologies, I'd love to talk. If you're interested in accessing real data for research and education, love to talk as well.
What kind of spectrum are you using? Licensed, unlicensed?
Yeah, well, I think my colleague Greg Jarman is going to actually talk about that in the next session. So we are starting with LoRaWAN, as well as I believe CBRS spectrum. And those are going to be the two main ones that we're going to test out in the beginning. But again, you think of this as more of a very tall vertical tower, right? And it's got 300 pounds of payload to attach multiple gears on that.
Hi, Joe Sawaski, Merit Network in Michigan. Great and innovative talk. Really, really exciting stuff. I understand Indiana has a large allocation of educational broadband spectrum, and it's right in that sweet spot of propagation and throughput. And I was wondering if you had any plans to use EBS, since this is a research and education project.
Well, love to talk about it. So yeah, we'd love to learn more. And maybe Greg is already aware of it, but if there's a way to collaborate, love to talk. I'd like to maybe just one thing. Again, we're a nonprofit, right? We're doing all this to promote research and education. And part of that is also publishing the things that we learn out of this infrastructure, right? So we want others to learn, and it's not going to be a silver bullet, right? But there are things that I think it could work out, and we like to share the information to others so that we can all work and collaborate together.
This may be an uncouth question, but how much did Lilly Endowment give you to do this project?
So the entire project, it was a 5-year project. It was close to $40 million.